Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. So Terrence Crawford has kind of stirred up a bit of a hornet's nest where a lot of people who follow him on Twitter are concerned about his mental state. Some are suggesting that maybe he's suicidal, and others are just concerned that he has other stressors going on in his life that we're not privy to. And they're selfishly worried about the fight not happening between him and Spence. Now, I read his tweet and I pasted it here so you guys can see it. All he says is, I might seem happy on the outside, but I'm really an angry person on the inside. Now, my thing is this. I don't know if everybody really understands Terrence Crawford's story, okay? But you've heard people talk about Terrence Crawford outside of the ring and how he has no issue, squaring up with you. Whether you're a fellow boxer, the cutman, the trainer, the promoter, the manager, he doesn't care. You've heard Kenny, Joe Jackson Porter, talk about having to get on Terrence Crawford. I guess they were in another country. I don't know if it was Olympics or just one of those amateur circuits they were on. And I guess Terrence Crawford didn't like the way he spoke to him. And then Kenny was walking, I guess, down a street or an alley somewhere close to a gym where they were training. Terrence Crawford met him and wanted to fight him, really go at it and fight him. And Kenny said he knew then that there was something about Terrence Crawford. And when you listen to Kenny Joe Jackson Porter talk, he's always toothpick in his mouth and playing tough guy and trying to fight Derek James. But when he spoke of Terrence Crawford, he seemed a little intimidated. And I was surprised at that. But when it comes to Terrence Crawford, obviously he smiles a lot, but there's something going on inside of him. And I can understand and relate to that. But you got to find a way to deal with it. So he is a guy who says, if you were to say something about his mom, disrespect her, and this is in a professional setting, whether he's saying trying to hype the fight up or not, he's going to want to beat you in the ring, and then outside of the ring, he's going to fight you again. So Terrence Crawford's a guy who takes things personal and doesn't, at this point in his life, doesn't know how to let things go. Although he has a great life, great family, he just, at his core, is what he is. Now, you got to understand that he cried after taking his first punch, but 2 decades when he actually first went to the gym as a little kid when he was, I think, 7 or 8 years old. But after 2 decades, he became the gym's first world champion, and that's outstanding. They even named the street after Terrence Bud Crawford, where he's from. But during his youth, Crawford was a troublemaker. He was kicked out of 5 schools for fighting, and he was, ferociously beaten by his mother whenever she found him wreaking havoc. Now, some people won't agree with that, and some say, hey, well, it kept him out of jail. But at the same time, man, that can damage you when you get beat like that, especially with belts and extension cords, which was some of the weapons of choice that his mom used on him consistently. And his father, Terrence Sr., was often away with the Navy, so his mother instilled a unique brand of tough love. So I think he wears some of that to this day. Because, man, let me tell you, you get hit with a damn belt is one thing, depending on where they put that belt, too. But an extension cord, consistently, as a little kid growing up, that can have an effect on you, okay? But there are a lot of people who've had those kind of spankings and say, hey, it made them who they were. But Terrence Crawford, seeing how his mom tore him up, he's not trying to let anybody put their hands on him. It's like, that's not going to happen. And understandably so. But when his father said the newborn should be $1 million baby, a world champion, his mother went on to say that the baby wouldn't be, shit. That's what his mom said. He's not going to be anything. You imagine that? That's how his mother treated him and things she said about him when he was a baby and while he was growing up. She used to pay kids to fight him. And, of course, Terrence Crawford used to beat him. But his mom was, just very, very hard on him. But anyway, before Crawford would beat Ricky Burns and win his first world title, his mother told him he was going to get his butt kicked. So again, as a professional, she was still trying to tear him down and just be super negative to him. And, that's child abuse, you know what I'm saying? But I don't really know what her reasoning was for being like that with him. But, some people only do what they know. But Crawford continued to battle for approval as a young man and even as he became a professional fighter. And like I told you, his mom used to offer kids, I think it was $10 for a street fight who can beat him up. And Crawford insisted it was all fun and games, but none succeeded. All he cared about was making his mom proud and fight hard. But his mother used to like a lot of drinking and dislike showing affection. The beatings made him immune to pain, while her words filled him with rage. Not that the fire inside him needed much fuel. So he says, I still to this day don't know why my mother treated me like that. I was just an angry kid, he reflects. And you got to understand, any child will be angry if you're getting, mentally abused, physically abused, your mother paying kids to fight you, and growing up in gang-riddled in streets that are, riddled with gang, riddled with crime. Terrence Crawford was sitting in the car counting money as a young man, got shot at, bullet, kind of bounced off his head and hit the window. And he was bleeding. He drove himself to the hospital. And as a young man up till an adult, he'd been shot at over 8 times. So Terrence Crawford has had it rough. But like for a lot of people, could be the environment. It could just be how he was born that made him that way. It was something that was in him, and he had a short temper, and he reacted to everything, and he's still like that. So as a kid, he used to have to see a counselor and all type of specialists, and they just couldn't figure out what it was. No one found a solution. Instead, time became his greatest healer. And my dad taught me that, become familiar with time. I mean, there's nothing, if you're suffering and you're angry on the inside from whatever happened to you, it continues to happen to you, there's nothing no one can say, man. There's no tablet you can take, you know what I'm saying, to rid that pain. You can't leave your mind behind. So you got to hold on to time, because time is your best friend. And with time, things get better. It'll never be the same. When damage is done, but things can get better with time. But with Terrence Crawford, he found that one solution. And it was his greatest healer. And he learned how to control his temper a little bit more. And that solution, which was his greatest healer, was boxing. And it helped him a lot. And especially when he had his first child, it helped him tremendously. So now he has 5 children with his longtime girlfriend. And even during the training camp, he flies home, determined not to miss a birthday or wrestling championship. He's a committed father, and you got to commend him for that. Determined to give his children a different life, and that's outstanding. His mother may have spurred him on to greatness, but Crawford has reasons for not following her lead, because for the simple fact that it built hatred in his heart. When you feel like the person that you love the most doesn't want to see you prosper and succeed, it's just like you're doing all of this to prove them wrong, but at the same time, it's building hatred in your heart. My mom has a lot of pain in her heart to where love is pain for her, but I teach my kids love is beautiful. Crawford insists he's now calm and more mellow than ever, but he still has anger in him. And that's just amazing, man. But, forget the fights and rage. He insists that he's just peaceful and at ease, but he's not walking around angry, but on the inside, it's there. And I think that's what he meant when he said, I'm really an angry person on the inside. Like, I think it remains dormant is what he's saying. But push the right buttons, it can service. And I think the anger manifests itself only in the savage switch hitting that carried him to all of his wins in the boxing ring. That's when you see it manifest itself. And that's why a lot of people are picking him to beat Earl Spence, because there is something definitely different about him, but that doesn't mean anything, because this is boxing, and one punch can change everything. But that's Terrence Crawford's story in a nutshell. But, Earl Spence is watching this and saying, it leaves everybody to kind of say, why would he tweet that? What's going on with him? You know what I'm saying? I personally don't think they need to look into it like that. But that's why I gave you all the backstory on him. This man's been through a lot. At home, can you imagine? One thing to go outside the house and deal with BS, but to come back in the house and you can't escape it. You know what I mean? That takes its toll on you. that causes you to develop a callousness around your heart. And every time somebody does something to you that hurts you, it's like a barnacle clinging to you. And over time, with all those barnacles clinging to you, it starts to bog you down. Now, there are things you can do to remove those barnacles: seeing a counselor, talking to friends, working out. There's different things you can do to lower your stress, lower your anxiety. There's even medication you can take. But there are some barnacles that have attached to you, and they've affixed themselves to the point to where it's impossible to remove them. You can get rid of enough to where you can function, but there's still those barnacles of disappointment, barnacles of hate, barnacles of hurt, barnacles of sadness, right? Barnacles of dejection that cling on to you and they bog you down. But Terrence Crawford has found a way to function and win in life, although he's still bogged down by a lot of those different barnacles that are clinging on to this man and his mind and his heart. And I just think Terrence Crawford, man, when I hear these stories, it touches me. You know what I'm saying? He has a unique story. Earl Spence has a unique story. Earl Spence's story is more just how he bounced back from the car accident and everything. And this guy, Terrence Crawford, is all his upbringing. And when you bring those two things together, you're going to have a great fight. But I'll leave that with you guys. If you knew all of this already, no problem. But if you didn't, it helps you to kind of understand the person, the character a little bit more. And then you can explain why Terrence Crawford kind of has a chip on the shoulder too. But that being said, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Shout out to all the veterans. Y'all keep cool. I'm in the breeze.